Wednesday's episode of Days of Our Lives looks like the kind of chapter where everything that has been simmering beneath the surface finally starts turning into consequences. The suspicions that have been building since earlier in the week may now be hardening into something much more dangerous, because once the truth begins to surface in Salem, the emotional damage usually follows fast. That is what makes this episode feel so compelling. It does not look like a day built around only one major shock. Instead, it feels like several stories are shifting at once. Some characters may finally get the validation they have been waiting for. Others may find themselves in the most exposed position they have faced yet. And in some of the quieter moments, the pain may hit hardest precisely because it is no longer being hidden very well. Let's start with Tate and Holly, because Wednesday may finally give them the kind of payoff that only matters when it has been earned. For days, they have been working from instinct, from unease, and from the growing sense that something about the supplement situation was deeply wrong. They did not have total proof at first, only the uncomfortable feeling that the story in front of them did not fully make sense. And in Salem, that can be a difficult position to be in. Until the evidence is clear, suspicion can make even the right people look impulsive, emotional, or too quick to judge. That may be changing now. If Tate and Holly are ready to celebrate, then it suggests the truth is no longer sitting in the shadows where people can ignore it. It means what they suspected may finally be visible enough that others have to acknowledge they were right. And that changes their role in the story in a big way. They are no longer just the ones asking difficult questions. They become the ones who recognized the danger before everyone else was willing to face it. But what makes it even stronger is that this is not just a personal win. It is the moment when a troubling mystery begins to harden into consequences. So if Tate and Holly are finally feeling vindicated, Wednesday may also be the point where their discovery stops being just a theory and starts hurting the person responsible in a very real way. If Tate and Holly are stepping into vindication, then Sophia may be stepping into the most dangerous phase of this storyline. The spoilers say she is about to face serious wrath, and that immediately tells us the emotional temperature around her may be changing fast. Because once a story moves beyond suspicion and into something clearer, people stop holding back. They stop second-guessing themselves. And they start responding with a level of anger that only comes when confusion is replaced by certainty. If she has been relying on doubt to protect her, if she has been hoping the blame would stay scattered or the truth would stay muddy enough to avoid a direct reckoning, that shield may now be collapsing. And once that happens, the danger for her is not just being accused. It is being seen differently by everyone around her. Because this may stop being about one bad act and start becoming about what that act says about Sophia herself, her judgment, her desperation, and the trust she may have broken in a much more serious way than people first realized. That kind of exposure is much harder to recover from. So Wednesday may not just be another difficult day for Sophia. It may be the day the story truly turns against her, when uncertainty disappears, emotions spike, and the reckoning the show has been building toward finally begins. Then there is Gwen, who has something to tell EJ regarding Dmitri, and that may end up being one of the most deceptively important beats of Wednesday's episode. On the surface, it may sound like a simple update. But with Gwen, EJ, and Dmitri involved, nothing is ever that straightforward. Information in a storyline like this usually carries baggage. It can reopen old trouble, create new leverage, or expose a vulnerability that someone thought was still hidden. That is why this conversation may matter far more than it initially appears. The real suspense is not just in what Gwen says. It is in what her information means once EJ hears it. Could this bring an old complication back to the surface? Could it disrupt something EJ already thinks he has under control? Or could it hand him a fresh opportunity to manipulate the situation to his advantage? Any one of those possibilities would make this scene much more significant than a quiet conversation on paper. Because EJ does not simply absorb information and move on. He analyzes it immediately. He starts measuring risk, advantage, and timing the second he realizes a new piece of the puzzle is in front of him. So Gwen's news may not create instant chaos on Wednesday, but it could absolutely be the moment where a larger strategy begins to shift. That is why this scene may feel quiet on the surface but still carry major consequences underneath. It may not explode right away, but it could plant the kind of seed that grows into much bigger trouble very soon. Then we have Xander and Sarah, and this may be where Wednesday's episode delivers some of its most emotionally painful material. The spoilers say Xander finds it increasingly hard to be around Sarah, and that one detail already tells us a lot. It suggests the emotional tension between them is no longer something he can push down or ignore. It is starting to affect the basic reality of being in the same room with her. And when a relationship reaches that point, it usually means the hurt underneath it has become impossible to manage quietly. Because the pain here may not come from a dramatic confrontation. It may come from the exact opposite. It may come from pauses that last too long, from words left unsaid, from the visible effort it takes for Xander to stay composed when simply being near Sarah is already stirring up more emotion than he can comfortably hide. And that kind of restraint can be devastating. In fact, the struggle itself may say something important. The emotional connection is still there. If Xander no longer cared, Sarah's presence would not affect him this deeply. The fact that it does suggests that whatever stands between them still matters, and perhaps matters more than either of them wants to admit. They may not be loud, but they could be intensely revealing. If Wednesday leans into that quieter emotional discomfort, then Xander and Sarah's material may become the kind of story beat that lingers, not because it explodes, but because it hurts in a way that feels raw, restrained, and very real. So when you look at everything coming up on Days of Our Lives for Wednesday, April 1st, this episode feels like a turning point where truth stops being a theory and starts becoming damage. Tate and Holly may finally get the validation they have earned. Sophia may be forced into the most exposed position she has faced yet. Gwen may bring EJ information that opens the door to a whole new complication. And Xander may be reaching the point where the pain around Sarah is becoming harder and harder to contain. That is what makes this episode feel so strong. It is not just advancing the plot. It is shifting the emotional balance inside several storylines at once. And in Salem, once people stop guessing and start knowing, that is usually when the real trouble begins.